It's nice to have a full room of people interested in the many topics we have today. But before we begin our official business, we have some changes on the board, and I will introduce you to our new member in just one moment. But before that, I want to talk about who our new member is replacing. You are all very familiar with Dr. Mimi Silver, who served on this board beginning in 1986. She had a bit of a break in service and was reappointed to the board in 1999. She has steadfastly supported the many agendas that have come before this group in her spare time, frankly. And she is a diligent advocate for all that we stand for in this room. She is, as you all know, the founder of Delancey Street, and which is a famous recovery home that is a model of its own. And I think it's nationally renowned. And Mimi has pushed that agenda solely with her incredible energy level, and I think her outcomes have been magnificent. She also is in the Hall of Fame in California, was appointed to that Hall of Fame in June of 2014, and was accompanied by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Francis Ford Coppola, and many other famous people. So we were here in the shadow of Mimi, I tell everybody. We're very much going to miss her on this board. She would like you all to know she is healthy and happy, but felt that she had to step down at this juncture because she couldn't pay the kind of attention that the board demands. With that said, she had something to do with who replaced her. And honestly, I'll introduce you now to Francine Tornell, who is our new board member. Francine is the director of the City of Sacramento Office of Public Safety Accountability, and she has been in that capacity since 2008. She is full of energy. Prior to her service in that capacity, she was a reserve for Sacramento Police Department, and before that, she was a Contra Costa Sheriff's Deputy from 1997 to 2003. So she comes to us, I think, with qualifications that sort of fill a void on the board, frankly. She sits with many dimensions, and I think her experience as a police officer and now as a public safety accountability officer will bring something to this board that is valuable. A credit to Francine is she didn't take this job board appointment prior to going to San Francisco and meeting with Mimi and sitting down with her and listening to Mimi's concerns and what Mimi would like to see fill the job. And after that, Mimi immediately called the governor's office and said, "This is your girl." Or your lady, I should say. I guess I can say this is your girl. Yes, this is the lady for the job. So with that said, I'd like to invite Francine to step up, and we'll do the oath of office, and then we'll hear a few words from you. I just want you to know, you probably can read this from there. Maria's figured out. The chair is aging. No, we don't have that. I don't want to make any comment on that at all. I'd like to say, I state your name.
Francine Tornell.
Do solemnly swear or affirm
Do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and that I will bear truth and faith and allegiance
and I will bear truth and faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States,
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of California,
and the Constitution of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
and I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Good to have you.
Thank
Thank you. So Francine, you can have about 45 minutes to tell us about yourself. We're in kindergarten and stuff.
I'll actually actually need about 50.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll just take a few seconds. I wasn't prepared necessarily to speak. I wasn't told I would be doing that. But I would like to thank you, and I thank the governor for having the confidence in me to fill some very big shoes. And my interest is definitely on behalf of the community, and that's the position that I'll take with the board. And I look forward to working with the other board, the needs of the community, to make sure those things are met. So thank you, and I appreciate you guys having me here.
And I would now ask Maria to take roll, please.
Ms. Penner,
Present?
Mr. Kerner,
Here.
Mr. Villaraigosa, Mr. Brown, Mr. Dean,
Here.
Ms. Perez,
Here.
Ms. Brown,
Here.
Mr. Artola,
Here.
Judge Garrett, Mr. Bejarano,
Here.
Mr. Budnick,
Here.
Mr. Steinhardt,
Here.
Ms. Cornwall.
Here.
We have a quorum.
And thank you to all the board members. I know this is a bit of a remote place. I appreciate you coming the distance today, and we are happy to be sharing the location and the event with CPPCA, California Probation and Parole. So it was great of them to invite us, and we generally try to accompany their conference because there is a great deal of overlap in both of our businesses. With that said, I'm going to defer right now on the chair's report because we are on a bit of a tight timeline today. And first of all, acknowledge in-house counsel is here, Aaron McGuire. Good to have you. Welcome you. I know you have very little to say today. And Katie, would you give us the executive director's report?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Katie Howard, the Executive Director. Welcome, Francine Tornor. We're delighted to have you here and had a really nice opportunity to meet with you with our management team yesterday for a new board member orientation. And with that in mind, I'm really happy to give an informational report to the board on the upcoming strategic planning process. Strategic planning, as I think any board knows, and certainly lots of organizations, private and public, strategic planning is important. Not everybody loves it, but it's really, really important. And this board has talked about a plan for strategic planning, sort of briefly here and there. Is that all right, Antonio? We'll see. Okay, over this past year, and
And thank you for that executive director report.
Is that how you feel about strategic planning? Yeah, of course not. So we are coming back to this topic. It is important. I think if we were to ask every member of this board right now, what is the mission of the BSCC? What are our key values? What are our goals? There would probably be general consistency. There is a strategic plan on the books, but that strategic plan was put in place when this organization and this board was reconstituted in 2012. So it's timely that we look at this now. The first 3-year strategic plan was slated to go through June of this year. And while I think we all might have liked to put our attention earlier in this calendar year on it, it takes time to get to strategic planning. We have a new board member now, and we actually have a few new board members from recent months. So it's a great opportunity to work with this board on a strategic planning process. This is not an action item for today, so I just want to give you some information about what we, as your staff, are suggesting the process include. In your binder under the information item tab, Info 2, you'll find a 1-page graphic about strategic planning. And I'm sure everyone in some form or capacity in other aspects of life has been through a strategic planning process that likely looks something like this. This is a very high altitude overview of strategic planning. And consistent with the statutes that create the BSCC and the mission and values of this board, we will have a process that starts with this board. And it includes in it stakeholder input at important intersections. And it is really, I think, important that we start with this board itself. You'll see in your materials, there was a letter that we received earlier this week, or very recently, from some of our most interested and involved stakeholders in the process, suggesting that strategic planning should be something an ESC engages in. And at least as a starting point, I think that question comes to the board. So what we are suggesting is that when we get to the calendar for 2017 meetings, that you instruct us, your staff, about when you would like to put strategic planning on the calendar. Two easy options would be adding a meeting in January, or perhaps adding a day on to your scheduled February meeting. We'll get to the meeting schedule in a little bit. Just want to throw that out as a bookmark, if you will, to say strategic planning needs to get on the calendar. The process, as you see in the one-page handout, and I'd like to thank our team, particularly Yvonne Garner and Tracy Cohn, for putting this helpful visual graphic together. We'll start with the determination of goals, which is at 12 o'clock on this strategic planning process. And the idea is that there will be a workshop for board members that creates clear organizational goals and priorities, and that considers input from stakeholders. So that's the process we envision starting early next year. And you can see that the goals then lead to the development of objectives and actions, which the staff will have a greater role in developing. So really, I don't want to go too much into the detail here because this is an informational overview item for you. But just to say that we look forward to a robust discussion at a strategic planning workshop early next year. And we know that the result coming out of that at the other end will be a strategic plan that reflects the values, the priorities, and the responsibilities of this board.
Just because logistically, I think the board may want to consider this as we approach this. We hope to attach it to a board meeting and do it possibly the afternoon before and go right into the meeting itself. I think we'll consider anybody on the board that wants to talk about locations that they think would be easier for people if they were going to do an overnight stay. So all that coming to a theater near you. Is that accurate?
That sounds right, Linda, yes. We do have on the consent agenda, and we may just want to talk about that briefly, the proposed schedule for 2017. So I think the staff would urge that this be a priority for February, and if the day before the suggested February 16th meeting looks good, then we can enjoy Valentine's Week focusing on strategic planning.
Valentine's and strategic planning, I'm going to have to really think that through. So news to follow on that.
Yes, absolutely.
Any comments by the board on strategic planning? I will just say that earlier this morning, my first sight of Katie, she said, "I'm so excited to talk about strategic planning today." And I thought to myself, wow, we gotta love that. So that's not my reaction to it, but I appreciate you moving this very important agenda.
Thanks.
Want to carry on?
Yeah, just very, very briefly. I just wanted to mention, and several people who are here in the room, including two of our board members, both Chair Penner and Mr. Steinhardt, participated in a recent meeting of our State Advisory Committee on Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, which is, for our new board member, I want to try to remember to stop and define the various abbreviations and acronyms that we use. For short, we call it SACJAB, believe it or not. This is our federally required advisory group on juvenile justice issues that focuses on the development of a 3-year plan for juvenile justice and administers some really important grant funding and has some other responsibilities. That group had a meeting that included participation from Bob Listenby, who's the administrator at the federal level of the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. It was a really excellent discussion. There were 2 additional colleagues with Mr. Listenby, talking about goals and priorities coming from that office. And what I think, I'll just do a little plug here, was particularly noteworthy is that Mr. Listenby emphasized in about 4 or 5 different ways how much he and his colleagues view California as a leader on juvenile justice reform issues, pointing very specifically to the reductions in juvenile justice populations in state detention facilities, doing a whole referencing the incredible work that's being done at the county level on system improvement. So the discussion was very good and helpful. Just wanted to bring that to the attention of the board. And then again, very briefly on Proposition 47, since this board last met, the Executive Steering Committee had a very busy and productive and to be continued ESC meeting on the development of the request for proposals on Prop 47. There is much work to be done, and we'll be coming back to the board with the proposed RFP in a matter of months. Leticia Perez and Scott Budnick, of course, chair that ESC. We have an October 17th meeting where we'll continue to get on down the road, as our chair likes to say, on the development of the request for proposals. That concludes my report. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
David.
Just 2 comments. First, kind of follow up on the visit from the Federal Office of Juvenile Justice. It was a very positive visit. I agree. We saw a lot of points of realignment between what's happening in California and what's happening nationally at a time when juvenile justice is moving forward in a transforming way. The policies are changing, the court decisions are changing, and so it's an interesting time. He did credit California with leadership in reducing the population of the California Youth Authority and realigning that population to the counties, and it is a success story. He cited the need for data, I think, and I can't resist this plug because, as you know, we had a very strong report coming out of the Juvenile Justice Data Working Group, pointing to the need to improve juvenile justice data collection in California. And I had a talk with him asking him if he could please fund the effort, and he was non-committal. However, I think that's the place we need to go. So thank you to the Sandra McBrayer and the SACSA JDP for making this event happen. So my other comment relates to the materials for this meeting. And I just wanted to ask the executive director if there was an explanation for why the materials came in at midnight last night, and that creates for over half the agenda. So that creates a burden for the board. I haven't been able to read the minutes. I'm reading them now. But I'm concerned about the public because the public needs to know what we're talking about in these important matters. And I'm sure there's some explanation for why, since this has been 3 months since the last meeting, the materials came in so late. And I would just like to ask the staff if they could address that.
Sure, David. I need to start with an apology. That really is not the way it's never our intent to be late in getting the materials out. I wish I had a really good explanation. I can certainly say that our staff at every level in the organization is very often juggling a lot of responsibilities and deadlines and so on, but our board deadlines need to be a bit more important than other deadlines. So I do take responsibility for my own inability to carefully enough track where we were with getting the materials out to you. There were some, some of this is just internal review processes where I thought we were a little bit further along on reports in some cases. And so really all I can do is apologize and promise to do better. The minutes should have been done sooner. You're absolutely right. We just, I think that I will commit that our management team will look at deadlines and accountability for deadlines in a bit more of a serious way. I apologize to the board and the public for the delay in getting the materials out, and I appreciate what you say that the meetings run better when all of us have had a chance to review the stuff in advance. So I am sorry. We had a virus, but that's not really the whole explanation. That's only part of it. And I don't mean bacterial, I mean computer.
I'm going to make 2 comments following yours. And then the first is about the visit from Listenby from DC. Really proud of the way California's conducted themselves in terms of juvenile justice. Also reckoning with the fact that in terms of strategic planning in juvenile justice, this board has some work to do. We have a number of competing interests working on juvenile justice policies. And in a perfect world, we could condense those and have a bit more of a continuum that brings all of the various task forces together under an umbrella. And we're going to work hard towards doing that this year because it's just that important. I appreciate you making your way to that meeting. I think that's a really big deal as a board member, being there and being willing to take time out of your day to continue your very, very strong efforts. You're certainly well versed on the adult side of the house, but you continue to pound the drum on the juvenile things. And I look forward to your leadership in the next year to continue that. And in terms of the difficulty we have with the minutes, I will say that I expressed similar frustration to you yesterday, and Katie's being really kind to me. I was a little perplexed by why things weren't, perplexed is another nice word. I have a virus also, but in truth and fact, the computer there did, and there was a lot of concern over data being lost, but it shouldn't have come down to me yesterday. So I appreciate you raising it. Thank you. Anything else from the board? Nothing. Then we'll move on to any legislative update.
Only to point to the summary of the legislation of interest to this board is included in your binder. I think it's at info 3. Yes, info 3. If there are any questions on that, of course, happy to take those. We'd like to provide you with the updates as of the end of session. And of course, the governor still has a few weeks left to take final action on bills passed by the legislature.
Anything from the board regarding the legal update? Seeing nothing, we'll move on now to the legal update. Aaron?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wanted to talk about two issues. One that's a holdover from our last board meeting. The first one is a somewhat newer issue regarding our burn JAG funding. And I'll give sort of a little additional background before we talk about this more. In May of this year, the Bureau of Justice Assistance released the solicitation for this year for burn JAG funds, which we always apply for as the state administrative agency. And going back as far as anyone can remember, there's always been a general provision in the JAG solicitation that says that any recipient of these funds will obey all federal laws in terms of receiving the funding. This solicitation was a little bit different and a little bit new because it specifically referenced compliance with federal law 8 U.S.C. section 1373, which prohibits local and state governments from preventing the sharing of information related to sharing of information to the Immigration and Naturalization Service regarding citizenship or immigration status. It's believed that this specific call out in the JAG solicitation was a result of some inquiries made by the House Republican chair of the subcommittee on Commerce, Justice, Science, and Related Agencies, John Culberson, who raised the issue with BJA. This solicitation then caused some good confusion in the field because this particular section has never been specifically called out before. People were asking, was this retroactive? What do we do with this grants? And it stirred up a lot of consternation, including with us, in terms of what do we do now with our grant recipients sort of in mid-grant when this got released. In June, the BJA posted a frequently asked questions document, which is included in your packet at information item info 4. The paragraph I want to bring to everyone's attention is the number 2, which is the question: may a state make a subgrant to a city that the state knows to be violating applicable law or regulation? For example, section 1373 for a programmatic requirement, and the answer that BJA says is no. In late July, we pushed this FAQ document out to our grant recipients. And then late July 28th, the Office of the Inspector General released a memo written to BJA on how it would investigate claims of grantees violating 8 U.S.C. 1373. That memo was also in the binder as well. In that memo, California was specifically called out as a test case, and specifically at that, the analysis involving California involved what we call here in California, which was recently signed by the governor of the Trust Act, and the Office of Inspector General looked at the Trust Act to determine whether or not that in and of itself would violate 8 U.S.C. 1373, and the Inspector General concluded that it did not. And so the next question is sort of, what else is the board's obligations in terms of ensuring that this federal law is followed? And we're still a little unclear about what exactly the feds are going to do next. In years past, would have already received the actual grant award letter from the federal government. We haven't received that yet. We're not entirely sure why, but we think it might have something to do with this sort of change in policy. What we are sort of expecting at this point is that this policy will begin prospectively in the next grant cycle, which is October. And we're waiting to see exactly how the federal government intends to do that. What we expect to see is that in our contracts, in the grant document, it will have a new specific federal assurance that says, again, that any grant recipient has to comply with 8 U.S.C. 1373. The one city and county that we think might have some trouble with this particular new policy is the city and county of San Francisco. They do have a ordinance on the books that basically says that they will not cooperate with the federal government with regard to certain immigration information. They are a current grant recipient that we are providing. We've been in contact with them preliminarily about, and they have questions too about, will this apply? How are they going to apply? Will they be asking for additional funding going forward? And we expect to have a follow-up conversation with them in the coming weeks. And again, we're still waiting for the actual award to be given to the state of California, but I wanted to bring the issue to the board's attention that this is out there.
Any comments by the board? And we have briefed both associations regarding this, the sheriffs and the police chiefs, and I guess we'll just watch this wind forward. When we get notification of the grant.
That would be helpful in terms of what the federal government intends to do with this.
All right.
The next item is a few questions were raised at our last meeting regarding the applicability of PREA to the state of California, to our local jails, in terms of what is the board's ability to incorporate the Prison Rape Elimination Act into the Title 15 regulations. Are we, is the board mandated to incorporate the regulations? Do we have the authority under the APA? There were issues raised about the Administrative Procedure Act prohibits duplicative laws to be incorporated into our regulations. And so there was a question asked and other issues raised, and a specific motion by the board to look into those issues a little bit further. I prepared a legal memorandum, which is in your binder as well, addressing several of those issues. I'd be happy to give you an overview of sort of the conclusions that I have reached researching some of the issues, as well as some additional issues that popped up in some comment letters that we received from the ACLU and the prison law office. So I'd like to just go over those issues briefly. So the first question that we were looking at was, can the Board of State and Community Corrections incorporate PREA into Title 15? The question there being whether or not the APA allows for that. After some additional research on that issue, I've concluded that yes, the board may in fact incorporate PREA into Title 15 if it so chooses, provided that it serves a different purpose. And in this situation, I believe it would serve a different purpose than what the federal regulations currently require, because it would have a different effect on our field reps. They would have to go out and inspect for this. And so it's not entirely duplicated with federal law. So I don't believe the APA serves too far for this board to incorporate the Prison Law Rape Elimination Act. Another issue that was raised specifically was raised in a later received letter from the prison law office was an argument basically that this board is mandated and required to incorporate PREA because to do so otherwise would create a conflict with federal law. I disagree with that analysis. Basically, the APA, the way the APA works in terms of having consistent laws, the provisions of that law basically require that entities and state agencies don't exceed their statutory authority in their promulgation of regulations. In terms of choosing not to incorporate PREA, that would not be in excess of the board's authority. This board gets to decide what the minimum standards are for local custodial facilities. And so choosing not to incorporate PREA would not be a violation of the APA. Another issue that was sort of raised is what does PREA actually require in terms of our state facilities mandated to follow PREA, our local facilities mandated to follow PREA. After researching this issue a little bit further, I've concluded that in fact, PREA is not a mandate on the state or the local governments, with some particular caveats, which is for Secretary Kernan, if he does not comply with PREA, that would result in a reduction of 5% of grant monies that we receive from federal government, which we are currently experiencing because we are not currently in compliance at the state level with PREA. But what the Federal Register specifically provides with respect to state and local agencies, and I'll just sort of quote what the Federal Register said during the final rulemaking process. With respect to the thousands of state and local agencies and private companies that own and operate and fund facilities across the country, PREA provides the department with no direct authority to mandate binding standards for their facilities. Instead, PREA depends upon state and local agencies to make voluntary decisions to adopt and implement them. This is sort of consistent with general, not to get into the legal constitutional weeds, but this is generally in accord with the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which basically says that the federal government can't conscript state and local resources to implement federal programs, and PREA would be consistent with how they've sort of laid out the enforcement prospects. The last and final argument I wanted to touch on was an argument that this board and the state would lose all federal funding because accreditation agencies are required to adopt PREA in order to continue to receive federal funding. Under my analysis, this board is not an accreditation agency within the meaning of PREA. That accreditation organization analysis really applies to the private and the other organizations such as the ACA, the AJA, and other entities that actually accredit jails. The board doesn't accredit jails. We inspect facilities for compliance with Title 15, and they are either in compliance or not in compliance, but we don't certify and approve those facilities. And there's no loss of certification if a person doesn't comply with those Title 15 requirements. That is not to say that there aren't some other serious considerations for the board to consider whether or not to adopt PREA. The purpose of the memo is really just to outline the legal framework of what this body is required to do or not do with respect to PREA. So those are the sort of the legal questions that I wanted to make sure that this board had answered as part of the discussion we had at our last meeting. And I'd ask for the questions.
Comments?
You read my mind, Mr. Steinhardt.
Thank you, and Aaron, thank you for the memo, and I particularly appreciated the short answers that were up front to help clarify the statements and positions you clarified. The overall conclusion from the council is that we can avoid PREA in terms of adding it to Title 15 regulations. But I think the real question is not what can we avoid, but what should we do? And I don't think, given the public comment and the attention coming to this board and the principles involved, that we can use council opinion or other reasons just to walk away from PREA. And we did put a placeholder on Title 15 final approval in the last meeting as well on whether PREA should be addressed in the regs that are coming back to us. So additionally, I'm really concerned on the juvenile justice side because we're in the process of adopting Title 15 regulations for children in facilities, and they have additional vulnerabilities that need attention in the context of PREA as well. So without reopening the whole subject, I just wanted to suggest that the focus looking ahead ought to be what an analysis of PREA and looking at the elements of PREA that are a fit for California, that we should embrace because they're the right thing to do, that don't impose undoable tasks on local corrections and the like. So I would like to think about it in a kind of a positive context about what's right about PREA rather than what can we avoid and what's too tough to reckon with. And I'm going to ask Sheriff Dean to, I talked with him briefly, and I think he has some ideas in this direction. Scared? Is it on? Nope.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't feel that was sincere.
No wonder sure Gunblood's always screeching in the woods. It scares me to think I actually agree with Mr. Steinhardt. So what I would suggest, it won't take me as long as it did David, that the devil's in the details, like it is with any piece of legislation that ends up coming out. What's the reality of this? And there's parts of PREA I think that are very applicable and appropriate to go into Title 15 for local agencies and state agencies. So I would suggest we set up some, whatever we call it these days, a subcommittee, QUZ and ESC, whatever's appropriate, and actually develop a working group, thank you, and actually develop some sort of matrix that goes through the details so we can look at all the points of PREA and say, okay, this could appropriately go in Title 15. This really doesn't belong in Title 15 for local agencies, and it's just an unreasonable burden. So I don't mean to kick the can down the road, but I want to do this right. And so many pieces of legislation come out, and the reality of the details is just devastating, and the intent really wasn't there. So that's a suggestion I'll put on the table, and I don't know the appropriate way to move forward with the group if that's acceptable.
Thank you. That resonates with me, but before we make that move, I'd invite anybody else on the board that would like to comment. I do have a card from Steve Meinrath. I don't see you, Steve, but I know, there you are. Hiding behind, he hides behind that so I can't see him roll his eyes when he doesn't like things. Please come forward and feel free to comment.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Is that on?
I'll just shout.
No, okay, Mom, I hear you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I realize this is not an action item, so I really appreciate it. Respond. I'm very encouraged by Sheriff Dean's suggestion. I think it's an excellent suggestion. Council and I just had an opportunity to briefly talk to Mr. McGuire about this. As you know, I sent my comments to all of you. These are comments that are part of the regulatory process, and I took the liberty of sending to board members because I knew there would be this conversation this morning. I just wanted you to know what our position is on these matters. We do have, we have reached different legal conclusions than Mr. McGuire on some things. We agree on other things. I haven't had an opportunity to go through his memo and detail where we agree and where we don't, but just based on our conversation this morning and his report this morning, clearly there are points of agreement and points of disagreement. The point of our comments, and I won't belabor legal issues this morning because I don't think that's the appropriate forum to do that. But the point is that the federal government has set minimum standards for county jails. We believe that it's important for a law enforcement agency like BSCC to recognize that those are federal standards and to incorporate them into California law. We also recognize that this is a very complex matter. PREA sets forth many requirements. And I think it makes perfect sense, as the sheriff suggested, to convene some sort of entity to look at what can be incorporated into kind of is a wonderful idea, and I would urge you to follow up on that. Let me just close very briefly by saying that I don't think there's a sheriff in California who would say sexual assault in their jail is okay. So I think we're all in agreement on that. The question is, how do we get from here to there? How do we get from where we are today to regulations that can help counties prevent this from happening in the first place? And I think your suggestion is an excellent one, and I look forward to the results of that body. And working with the BSCC on that.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you. Since we've opened it somewhat to the audience, which is unusual, anybody else in the audience want to speak to this issue? Seeing none, back to the board. It is not an action item today, so I'm not certain what the appropriate course of action is at this juncture, council.
I think it would depend on how formal process the board would want to do. If we were to create a committee, that would have to be on a noticed agenda for the next board meeting. If we wanted to convene a working group and have that as a staff-driven item, we can sort of direct staff to do that and sort of commence a working group model at the staff level. But if we wanted a formal body that would create we would have to notice that ahead of time as part of that.
I have a comment.
Yes. Chief Brown.
I would just like to, I like the idea, and I would just like to ensure that it does include juvenile as well. Obviously, as we're entering into the revisions on the juvenile regs. And also keeping in mind that each county has its own legal counsel. And there's differing opinions county to county as to how PREA applies. And so we have to keep that in mind too as we have this conversation.
Going out on a bit of a limb here, working towards being expeditious on this issue as we close the regs on the adult side and reopen on the juvenile side. It would seem creating a working group between now and our next meeting could get us a bit of a work product prior to finalizing adult regs, and we could manage both within the next meeting. Is that allowable, council?
I think so. Yeah, I believe that would be appropriate. I think I will have to tell you, I've sort of preliminary started looking at what we would be doing in terms of comparing, I would say comparing Title 15 in one column with some regs in the other column. I think it's going to be pretty laborious in terms of examining those things. I honestly don't know if we would have a good product by November.
Would it be safe to say that we could get a status report in November and have some sort of ability to manage both regs, juvenile and adult, down the road to begin the work now? I see Sheriff Dean would like to.
I agree with Mr. McGuire that it's going to be a brutal task, but if we can just start, I get a little impatient. We have a meeting to approve committee and then we start and then we're a year down the road and we haven't done anything. If we're allowed to ask staff to maybe establish some names and start working on it with the matrix, maybe send it to Mr. Meyer and have him look at some options and, just to get going on it. Otherwise, it just adds months and months and months to it. Whatever, if we're allowed to do.
I even think Mr. Meinmuth will agree because he's I think, I'm not making any announcements for him, but I think he'd like the work to begin sooner than later. So, do we need a motion on this, or we can just direct
No.
staff to
We
create?
can't.
Yeah.
I think we can't, I think we can resolve and move forward. And I just wanted to say that I can kind of compress it and do it all before November. It's really just too much to do, but head start, absolutely.
Okay. I think, seeing agreement, a lot of nodding heads, then we'll direct staff to create the working group and move forward on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then one note I wanted to just point out, because of the regulatory timing of the adult reg and the process, we may have to restart some of the adult reg process just in terms of the comment period and stuff like that. So-
And I would ask you, for the benefit of the board, I know I asked this question yesterday, but I think it's the benefit of the audience and the board to both hear about the timelines on the adult regs and where we stand at this juncture.
And I'm gonna phone a friend on that one.
Phone a
Allison.
friend, you don't have any lifelines, that's not allowed.
Allison, if you could give us an update on the timeline, thank you.
Sure. Good morning, Board. Allison Cantor, Deputy Director of the Facility Standards and Operations Division. So what we just finished on September 12th was the 45-day public comment period for the Administrative Procedures Act, in accordance with the APA, with the Office of Administrative Law. That period has been closed, so we're going to respond to any comments that we received during the public comment period, and we'll be bringing, provided that there are no changes to the regulations that have been revised already, we're going to bring that package to the board in November for final approval and move toward final adoption by the OAL. So as Erin mentioned, if we do make any additional changes to regulation, two things need to happen. We need to reopen the current process and build in additional public comment periods, or we can continue with the regs package that we have now and then open up another public comment period with separate regulations. So November approval, final approval by the board, and then we'll move through the final OAL process and hopefully have regs by early next year.
Any questions of Allison? I should acknowledge at this point that we have received letters from the Returning Home Foundation, the ACLU, and the Prison Law Office referencing our Title 15 and 24 regulations on the adult side. Anything further on this? All right, now we return to the consent portion of our agenda, beginning with the minutes from the June 9th meeting and asking for approval of those minutes.
I'll move to approve.
No second.
We have a first and a second. Any comments at this point? Abstention? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained?
I'm gonna have to abstain. I'm abstaining too, because I didn't get to read them.
We have 2 abstentions. Does the motion carry?
Yes, it does, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The consent portion of the agenda, I think then, Madam Chair, has a schedule.
Right, thank you.
For the 2017 meetings, and I'd hope that people could take a quick look at that, reckoning with the fact that it wasn't right where we needed to be in timely fashion. And that is item B in your packet. Any glaring issues at this juncture, reckoning with the fact that life happens and sometimes you can make it and sometimes you cannot.
Madam Chair, I would just ask that if we're going to build strategic planning, and we do not make it a separate meeting, and now we do it before or after, so those of us that have to fly and be here, don't have to take a home of the flight. Thank you.
I agree.
And Madam Chair, would it be the board's preference that we send out a poll to ask if Wednesday, the 15th, or Friday, the 17th of February would be preferable to you? Then we can plan on a 2-day meeting that will include a regular board meeting and a strategic planning session.
Makes sense.
That's what we'll do.
I would like to add to Sheriff King that I have to take the train when I travel, so.
Do you have a train from Big
It's the bullet train.
And the locations really are proposed. I appreciated what Madam Chair said about now looking at a 2-day meeting and just a little bit of thinking out loud. It might make sense to pick a location like San Diego, which generally is easier for people to get into and out of on planes or trains or automobiles. So just as a thinking about a placeholder, we might make that a San Diego location.
Yet again, looking for approval of this proposed meeting schedule. It's on our consent item. I'm looking for a motion to approve it.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. We'll go ahead and move that further. And now, we're moving on to the action item. Assembly Bill 8900 Phase 2 financing for adult facilities. And I see Maggie Work coming to the podium. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. Okay, it looks like I have 3 items to do for you folks this morning. I'm going to start with agenda item C. This item requests the board approve extension for the Siskiyou County 8900 Phase 2 project establishment schedule from September 2016 to May 2017. Staff recommends an extension of the project establishment schedule, which will allow the county time to secure additional funds and to submit to the project through the SBP process. Any questions?
Questions?
Okay, I'll move on to item D.
Do you want, yeah, you want to vote?
Oh, sure.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's really not up to you, we're going to vote.
I was just hoping you'd vote on it.
Seeing nothing from the board, is there anyone from the audience that would like to comment on this item? Seeing nothing, looking for a motion?
Second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
Okay, now I'll go to agenda item D. This is Tulare County's 1022 project, and they're requesting a scope change to actually increase their scope from a decrease of a partial award, and then going back to a full award again. So staff recommends that the board approve Tulare's request to change the scope of their Sequoia Fuel Program facility, their Senate Bill 1022 financing.
Move approval.
Second.
Any comments from the audience on this matter? Seeing none, back to the board. We have a first and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item E. This agenda item requests the board to approve the proposed Senate Bill 844 Executive Steering Committee membership and appoint board member Sheriff Jeff Dean from Ventura County as chair to this committee. It further requests approval for the BSC to oversee the development of the request for proposal and the rating criteria for board approval. As you may be aware, on June 27th, 2016, SB 844 became law, authorizing $270 million of lease revenue bond financing for adult construction facilities. As stipulated in SB 844, of the $270 million, $20 million has been set aside for Napa County. SB 844 is nearly the same as SB 863, focusing on improved housing with an emphasis on programming and treatment. However, there are a few key areas that are different. The first one being counties that wish to apply for this financing must include person-to-person visitation capable of meeting or surpassing the minimum number of weekly visits required by state regulation. And the county must include in its proposal a description of efforts to address sexual abuse in its facility. I'd also like to note that counties that are eligible to apply are only counties that have not received lease revenue bond financing or have only received a partial since this whole process started. Included in your agenda item is a tentative SB 844 timeline and activities with the proposed first BSC meeting October 20th with a follow-up meeting on November 10th. And then also is the proposed membership of the SB 844 BSC committee that we're going to throw up here so the public can see it.
I can't believe you didn't want my head in the middle.
As he's doing this, I'll just say this roster reflects the necessary expertise taking into account geographic locations and diverse experience in the criminal justice system.
Tough to see.
Oh, it's warming up. It is. There we go. Better. We shouldn't complain, the audio visual at our real board meeting is not near this user friendly.
This is fair.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
do you think the proposed chair has the energy to take this on?
We certainly looked very hard at that, and I appreciate your sentiments. We'll keep a close eye on
I'm
them.
fully in support of a different chair.
Oh.
Are we discussing this? Or
I'm just gonna let
is that
you
not-
know.
Is that not happened yet?
the discussion. Would you like to finish the item before we do the, let staff finish?
I'll just finish with staff recommending that the board authorize BSC to oversee the development of the SB 44 RFP and rating criteria. Appoint board member Sheriff Jeff Dean to serve as the ESC chair. Delegate authority to the chair to work with staff to make final draft list of the ESC members and to add members as needed, and to approve activities and tentative timelines associated with the RFP.
Thank you. Then we'll go to the board for comment.
Comment, yes, please. So this was one of the items that the information came in late, so this is the first I've seen it, the group, and it looks fine, but there seems to be an absence of a community-based offender service person on this list, and since this, like 863, is strongly about services for offenders and housing their needs, I wondered if consideration was given to that spot, and I did hear just now authority to add members, so can you respond to that?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was on mute. I would just ask the board members to note the person on line 8, Karen Delaney. She was recommended by a former board member, Susan Moriello, and Ms. Delaney, and again, I apologize, David, because you might have seen this sooner and had a chance to do some looking, but Ms. Delaney has an absolutely amazing and fantastic record as a community-based service provider for programs both in custody and out of custody. She's been in Santa Cruz for many, many years, and she has real direct experience in this way.
I have a question, and it's more just for an education for me. On these types of programs, adult facilities, reentry programs, is probation ever considered to be on the ESC, to represent on the ESC? Because many times probation is a partner when it comes to reentry programs, so I'm just curious if that's ever been considered.
Sure, we have a retired chief probation officer suggested on this roster, LaDonna Harris, who recently retired out of Alameda County, bringing that expertise. And yes, probation has served before, thank you.
Thank you.
And I think as you suggest in your recommendation, this is a draft,
Proposed, correct, motion.
and there will be additional work done. So any of these concerns, I think, are on record. Anything further from board members? Anything from the audience on the side?
Good morning, my name is Eric Webster. I'm from the Center on Juvenile and Criminal Justice. This is the first time I've seen this executive steering committee proposed membership plan, and I have to say the lack of community-based service providers in this list is a little troubling. These construction projects have decades of impact on the counties where they are built, and I think that community interest in this project is strong, and if there's time to add more service providers and in fact even formally incarcerated people to this BSC, that would be ideal. Moving forward with this funding, in contrast to the SB 863 experience, I would ask that BSCC staff make all materials available to the public in a timely fashion. That includes the draft RFP and the subsequent county applications. And in a timely manner, I mean enough time for members of the public to review all these applications and advocate on their behalf. This round of funding was problematic to a lot of advocates because it's $250 million for a relatively small number of counties, which hinders the competitive nature of this funding process. So all the more reason to include more community-based service providers on this ESC and allow as much stakeholder inclusiveness in this process as possible.
Thank you very much. Back to the board. Looking for a motion to adopt the recommendations as noted.
Motion? Second.
First and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you, May. Okay. I can move back, there's no one. Well, I'll just move back there, even though I can't see anything. I don't think this lighting is flattering, just need to put that on there. Are we at the discussion portion of the agenda?
Item, ready for item F.
Thank you. And now, they're on the lead grant.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I'm Colleen Stoner with the Corrections Planning Program Division, and I'm presenting on agenda item F. Agenda item F is an action item requesting board approval on several issues relating to forming an executive steering committee for an exciting project called the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Pilot Program, which I will refer to as the LEAD program going forward. Senate Bill 843 established the LEAD program, which is to be administered by the Board of State Community Corrections. The goal is to improve public safety and reduce recidivism by increasing access to and use of social services, while at the same time reducing the costs of repeated incarceration. The LEAD project is modeled after the LEAD project in Seattle, Washington. This project will divert individuals who may be arrested for or who have a history of low-level drug offenses or prostitution to social service providers in lieu of prosecution. Services provided may include, but are not limited to, case management, housing, medical care, mental health care, treatment for substance abuse, employment training and placement, as well as civil legal services and system navigation. 3 jurisdictions are to be selected through a competitive bid process to receive funding to implement the LEAD project. $15 million was appropriated from the general fund for the project, and the board is authorized to spend up to $550,000 of that amount for 2 purposes. The first is to contract with an outside evaluator to determine the program's effectiveness, and secondly is to contract with experts in the implementation of the LEAD program to provide technical assistance to the participating jurisdictions. We anticipate that this grant award cycle will begin in May of 2017 and end June 30th, 2019. A report of the evaluation findings is to be submitted to the governor January 1st, 2020. As you're aware, our ESCs are typically chaired by board members, and board member David Bejarano has expressed an interest in chairing this executive steering committee. In light of the tight timeline and in anticipation of the membership needed for the ESC, an invitation to interested parties was posted to our website to solicit potential members. We received approximately 18 statements of interest, which helped us form a prospective membership list based on the geography, diversity, and subject matter expertise. Continued efforts are still underway to finalize the list and identify additional members needed to complete the roster. A copy of the list is attached to the report and is also on this PowerPoint. This agenda item also requests the approval of the project timeline, which can be found on page 2 of your agenda report. The activities associated with the timeline are ambitious and require that we be able to move forward without delay. At this time, staff is requesting the board authorize an executive steering committee to oversee the development and release of the LEAD program and the RFP recommendations, and appoint board member David Bejarano to serve as the chair of the ESC. Delegate authority to the chair to work with staff to finalize the preliminary list of ESC members and add members as needed. And finally, approve the activities and tentative timeline associated with the RFP.
Thank you. I would add, I believe we learned this morning that we have a co-chair, and I think we should note that at this point it would be our new board member, Francine Turnow, who is and volunteered to do that. She's been on the job 10 minutes. I think that's really important that you help later on. So, as an augmentation to this existing ESC. I'm looking to the board for any comment.
Move staff recommendation.
Second, very exciting project. Thank you.
It is that, looking to the public. Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. And thank you to our co-chairs. Appreciate you very much. Moving on to item G. Here's a familiar face. Good morning, Ricardo.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Ricardo Goodrich from the Corrections Planning and Programs Division, and I am presenting agenda item G on behalf of my colleague, Colin Kirk, who is unable to attend today. So this agenda item requests approval to establish an executive steering committee for the next cycle of the California Gang Reduction, Intervention, and Prevention Program, also known as CALGRIP. CALGRIP is a state-funded grant to cities designed to reduce gang violence through prevention, intervention, and suppression strategies. Additional information about this grant, including project descriptions for current grantees, can be found in the agenda item report and attachments. This CALGRIP ESC will oversee the development of a request for proposal, read and score proposals, and make award recommendations to the board. As part of this agenda item, staff is requesting that the board approve the appointment of board member Chief Michelle Brown as chair of the ESC. Chief Brown has tentatively agreed to serve in this role. Staff is also requesting permission to work with the chair of the ESC to finalize a draft list of members and requests that the board delegate authority to the chair to modify the ESC membership if needed. In order to allow an opportunity for its current members to continue, but also provide an opportunity for new individuals to participate in the next cycle, BSCC opened up membership and invited the public to submit statements of interest. Information was posted on the BSCC website, and staff invited all current standing committee members to express interest. As a result of this, a draft membership list was developed based on subject matter expertise, geography, and diversity. For your review, a draft list of ESC members is contained in attachment 1. It's also listed behind you on the screen. As you can see, potential members come from as far north as Humboldt County and as far south as Imperial County. There is strong representation from law enforcement and from community policy and advocacy groups that work with populations impacted by gang violence. It is also important to note that Sheriff Steve Moore of San Joaquin County has agreed to serve on the ESC. As a member of the prior standing committee on gang issues, Steve Moore will provide valuable continuity and historical context to the process. In conclusion, staff recommends that the board authorize an ESC to oversee the development and release of the CALGRIP RFP and recommendations, appoint board member Chief Brown to serve as chair of the ESC, delegate authority to the chair to work with staff to make final the draft list of ESC members and to add members as needed, and approve the activities and tentative timeline associated with this RFP. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Sorry, I'm having a meaningful discussion over here. Just as thank you for your recommendations. I would learning some things about proposed membership, and would once again ask you to restate this. This ESC is open to discussion following the moving by. Okay, thank you. Looking for motion.
Motion on staff's recommendation.
Second.
Second.
Any public comment on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained, motion carries. Moving on to item H. Daryl, good morning. Whoops. Daryl, why did you make noise? No one else did. Can I start with that question?
Truly appalled.
Okay.
Madam Chair, board members. My name is Daryl McDaniel. I'm a field representative with the
I
correctional.
don't think your mic is on.
How about now?
That's good.
My name is Daryl McDaniel. I'm a field representative for the Correctional Planning and Programs Division. The item before the board requests your approval to convene an executive steering committee to develop the RFP and make award recommendations for the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice System Grant for the new cycle starting in January of 2018. Staff is also requesting that Chair Linda Penner be appointed as the chair of the ESC to oversee the RFP development and the selection of the JAG ESC members. At the November meeting, staff will present a proposed JAG ESC membership for your approval. The JAG program in California is a key provider of federal criminal justice funding to the state and local jurisdictions. The program has 7 program purpose areas that are listed in your board report. Today, staff is simply recommending that the board appoint Linda Penner to serve as the chair for the JAG ESC. And secondly, approve the development of the proposed JAG ESC for the next JAG cycle starting in January of 2018.
So moved, it's only appropriate that
Yeah.
Chair Penner serve as the chairperson of the ESC, as long as she has the energy.
Yeah. It's actually, well, Vern Jag was so controversial last time. It seemed like the right thing to do is to step up on this one. So looking for any other comment from the board except Sheriff Dean.
We did the heavy lifting already, this should be easy.
Yeah. Okay. Anything from the audience? Second. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Michelle. Anything from the audience on this? Seeing nothing, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Thank you very much. Motion carries. Moving on. Congratulations from my board members. Item I.
I'll also be presenting on September.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Daryl.
I'm going to stand way back here.
This is one of those items, this is similar to an item we had on our last agenda, it's money that we go to San Bernardino County. At this point,
He's trying to tell you to leave.
He's kicking you out of the room and he's getting feedback on it. Yeah. And I think that Chief Brown, this should be a really quick item, so don't go too far.
I believe Chief Brown is just going to be exiting for purposes because it's money going to San Bernardino County. So with that, I would turn it back over to Mr. McDaniel.
Thank you. On September 1st, 2016, the Bureau of Justice Assistant advised BSCC of a second $500,000 reimbursement grant for San Bernardino County for some of the costs related to their December 2nd, 2015 active shooter incident investigation. This board previously approved staff to apply for the initial award in June of 2016, and it was subsequently awarded. Upon word of the second award, the Board of State Community Corrections Chair and Executive Director instructed BSCC staff to submit the application for the additional grant, and this was completed on September 8th, 9th, 2016. Staff is currently working with San Bernardino County to provide follow-up budget details to BJA. Staff recommends upon receipt of the funds, the board directs staff to seek budget approval from the Department of Finance to disperse the funds to San Bernardino. Yes, concludes my report.
Thank you, and it's a real good news story, honestly. very costly in San Bernardino, and the fact that they're getting another $500,000. Positive, yes, yes.
Move approval.
Second.
Looking for anything from the audience prior to taking the vote? I'm getting good at that now, I'm much prouder of it. Outstanding achievements by the chair. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Let the record reflect Chief Brown is out of the room right now. Motion carries. And inviting her back in. If she came back in on her own, we know she was listening. Oh, she ran away. We'll hold just a minute for her return before we do Adam J. A few moments to all be introspective and think about what a positive day it is today, and we get to do strategic planning. Katie Howard's favorite subject.
A lot of support for that.
That's right. We could do potpourri at this meeting. No, we cannot. No. See, look how it's said. Can't do potpourri.
Trying to get the CBA on Friday.
The chair would like to exercise control of the meeting again. Apparently when Chief Brown leaves, Chief Bearano leaves, we have a lot of departures from the room. We're moving on now to item J. Thank you for joining us. Daryl, I think this is you also.
I think that
That's just offensive. Many stores.
we're gonna try this one. So, I'm gonna try to do this very briefly, Madam Chair. We have put this item on the agenda because we thought the board might want to take some action on it. After some further review, I think we decided that no action is necessary, but we wanted to give a sort of a quick summary of what has been going on. The Office of Justice Programs has proposed to update the regulations regarding the administration of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act. When we first took a quick look at those regulations, which got noticed on September 7th, we were very concerned at the outset because we thought it could result in around a 60% reduction of Title II funding in the state of California. After we looked back, we kind of recrunched the numbers in terms of some of the outcomes and goals associated with JJDPA. And it looks like what we might be subject to is a potential 20% reduction of funds. And in fact, we would normally be in compliance with some of the benchmarks that JJDPA would require. And really the last benchmark in which the state of California might be out of compliance with deals with removal of juveniles from lockups. And we're going to be taking a little bit closer look at those numbers again. But what it looks like is happening is some very, very isolated incidents are actually violations of California state law and the Welfare Institutions Code. And because of that, I think it's incumbent upon the board to sort of look at the situations and reach out to those institutions right now to make sure that they're complying with state law. And as long as they're complying with state law, then we anticipate that we actually have no reductions under these proposed regulations. And for that reason, we would recommend the board not comment at this time on the JJDPA regs.
Can I comment without commenting? Sure. So this is the first I've heard of this, and I'm sort of surprised, and I just would like to learn more about the incidence of non-compliance. I actually wrote 207.1D percentage on press late in 1987, and that was compliance with the JJDPA on kids out of jails. So I'm concerned, we all are concerned if that law is not being honored, and I would just like to learn more about it, and if BSCC has a role in helping local law enforcement facilities comply, I would want to possibly be in that discussion. Thank you.
In fairness to a legal presentation on this, I'd like to put this in somewhat layman terms. Council McGuire, you did an excellent job, but factually, I believe what's going on is status offenders are being held in jail lockups longer than 6 hours. And the instances are minuscule. It is one of those things where you do a very good job and they begin to close the gap, so there's 0% error. And California has done an exemplary job. I think our number was somewhere in the neighborhood of, was it 26? Did we get 26 individuals? Somewhere in that neighborhood. It was under 50, I will say that. Because the margin of error is so minor at this point, we were going to have to comment just to have that on the record with OJJDP. The issue was raised at the meeting with Liston B last week, and I think when we looked closer at the numbers, we were the numbers were not as high as we had thought originally.
And I'm gonna turn to Allison just in a second, because there's 4 core protections and there's a couple of issues. The status offenders issue is one issue, and then there's the removal, which is a slightly different category. They're changing both of those standards. And again, the status offenders, we thought we were doing not such a great job, and it turned out, again, further looking at the numbers, we're actually ahead of the curve, doing better than what the regulations are going to change to. That had just to do with, to get into these a little bit, counting offenders under the interstate compact differently, and we resolved that. I believe the standard under the 207.1 deals with the removal of from the secure facilities. They're tweaking that standard a little bit, and we would be slightly out of compliance with the new standard. But again, because of 207.1D, we think it would be inappropriate for us to criticize the feds for doing a standard which we are already supposed to be.
And as you suggest at the end of your conversation, this really looks more like conversations with jurisdictions where it's happening to refresh their memory on the law as it stands.
Yes, and Mr. Shemmer would be happy to come discuss that.
That's a task for one of our board members. So information only, looking to the audience for any, sorry, Michelle.
That's okay. I was also present when Administrator Liston was did his presentation last week. No, and so I'm surprised to hear this too. And I know that CPOC was prepared to also respond as a result of what was discussed. And are you, Chair Penner, I'm assuming, are you going to have a conversation with CPOC to let them know that information has changed? Is that?
Yeah, I think Allison actually presented last Friday to CPOC, so they're aware of it, and I think we're all squared away in terms of that piece of it.
Okay, so the new information was presented.
Yes.
Right.
Perfect, thank you.
Inviting the audience once more. Seeing nothing, I think we don't need any action on this item. Thank you for that information. And now we are at the public comment portion of the agenda, where any item, either on the agenda or not on the agenda, is open for comment. There is a 3-minute limit to that comment. Do I have any cards? No cards. I have to do better. We need to have cards, but because you know, you did an eloquent job before, you come on forward for 3 minutes, and we're tough on that 3 minutes.
Okay.
At 2:50, there's a huge buzzer that goes off.
Very slowly.
Okay, hello again. I have some comments on the creation of the strategic plan, and I want to thank Executive Director Katie Howard for mentioning the letters from the advocates. As Ms. Howard mentioned, members of the advocacy community asked that the BSCC establish an ESC to create the strategic plan moving forward. We believe that this will create a more transparent and stakeholder inclusive process. As I mentioned before, the decisions and the priorities set by the BSCC have a profound and lasting effect on not only public safety, but the communities most impacted by the criminal justice system. And as such, we ask that the planning process include stakeholders outside the BSCC staff, explicitly including formerly incarcerated people and community-based service providers. Not only on the ESC, but in a continued outreach effort to communities. The BSCC staff and board, with the implementation of Prop 47, created a model of community outreach by hosting those regional community meetings. And we think that that process should be replicated in the creation of the strategic plan. I think the board and staff would be, I think the community would show a great deal of interest in what the BSCC goals are moving forward. And I think the BSCC should take advantage of the expertise of community leaders in the implementation of evidence-based programming outside of local criminal justice facilities.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Israel Villa. I'm a program assistant with MIPA and Salinas. I also wanted to comment on the letter of recommendations for the BSCC's 3-year strategic plan, and also want to echo what our colleague just stressed right now. Although I fully support all the recommendations, I really want to highlight 2 or speak on 2 of them. The first is that if and when this BSC is established, that it does include folks who are formerly incarcerated, system impacted. I myself am formerly incarcerated and have had a long and abusive relationship with the system. However, I do not blame the system for my mistakes. I take responsibility for my actions, and by the grace of God, I'm still alive and I'm not doing life. And I'm back trying to better our community and also willing to contribute my experience and expertise. With that, again, I feel that folks with lived experience need to be on this ESC, as well as with direct and personal experience, can and will be instrumental in developing effective and innovative solutions. There are many folks like myself who are returning with a different mind frame, tired of the cycle of incarceration, ready to contribute to bettering our community and our justice system. The second one I wanted to highlight, to prioritize community-based, culturally responsive alternatives to court and incarceration, especially for youth. Fiscally, it makes more sense, but more importantly, community-based organizations and alternatives have proven to be successful in attacking recidivism and arrest rates. Also feel that culturally competent, evidence-based practices will support the academic and mental development of our youth and ultimately deter them from a lifestyle of incarceration. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, my name is Dominique Nong. I work at the Children's Defense Fund, California. I'm also here to speak about the exciting endeavor of creating a new strategic plan for the BSCC. I'm an executive director. Howard's comments, she mentioned how Administrator Bob Listenby said that he viewed California as a leader. And I'm here to sort of remind you that in order for California to continue to be a leader in pushing sort of a paradigm shift that even Mr. Steinhardt recommended that is going on in both juvenile justice and criminal justice across the nation, that the incorporation of people directly affected by the systems be incorporated into this process, as well as the service providers. More practically speaking, I truly appreciate the planning process handout that was given. And what I did notice is that it seems like the process starts in January with the workshop. And at the workshop, the board members are to consider input from stakeholders. And so one question I had is, there's stakeholder input located throughout the plan in a diagram, but I would respectfully ask this committee think carefully as they plan the calendar, which I know is very difficult to do, about where and when specifically and how to make sure that stakeholder input, specifically from the community, is incorporated in this process, even perhaps before that January 17th meeting, because as someone mentioned about the Prop 47 ESC, there were 6 regional meetings that were held, and the input from those meetings were incorporated into that ESC's priority set. So I would ask that the same be done for the strategic planning.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Board, Greetings. My name is Jagada Chambers. I work with a community-based organization in Stockton, Fathers and Families of San Joaquin. I just want to approach the honor board and just to petition to make sure we keep that community-based, the community organization in the thought and in the process when it comes to planning this. I know our organization specifically in our partnership with our local probation around AB 109, we have had numbers that have been statistically just awesome, from 11.8 recidivism rate, from 11.8 to 11.4 to 10.8. We definitely have medicine that is working with the people that we're trying to reach. So I know our executive director was part of the Prop 47 ESC, and I think it's been beneficial. I know our county specifically has touched nearly 40,000 people, you know, when you're talking about families and everyone that are affected. So we just want you guys to be cognizant of the people who are doing the work. I feel like some of the work that we do is as important to public safety as our law enforcement brothers. So sincerely, make sure our voice is at the table when it comes to arranging the strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Morning.
Good morning. My name is Raymond Aguilar. I spoke before this half an hour before. I was recently released inmate. I was a juvenile who served 25 years in prison, and I've been 3 months out. And I've been fighting this fight to get some answers for the juveniles that are still behind the walls. And before I go, I also wanted to point out Mr. Scott Kernan. I did 12 years in Milk Creek State Prison over there. And we started the CJA program over there. We were the first level 4 to put into the program the Criminals and Gang Members Anonymous. We also did juvenile diversion programs over there. That was one of the prisons where I got a lot of rehabilitation at, where you were at. But you were also appointing people as family council members. My wife was one of the members that you appointed to deal with a lot of members inside the prison and outside the prison. So I want to thank you that I was an inmate. I was an inmate. Working with you now. I'm a free man society. And nervous, shaking, but it's just an honor. It's an honor to come here dressed as a citizen and not an inmate anymore. And thank you. I want to talk about the juvenile justice and what are we doing. A lot still needs to be done. A lot. I was tried as an adult at 16 years old. I'm 41 years old today. 3 months out, I'm seeing that there's still laws that are trying to try younger juveniles as adults. We're trying to try juveniles as young as 14 as adults and say that they are of adult mentality. That is a lie. I am a prime example of that. At 16 years old, I went to youth authority. I started off at CPS. From CPS, I went to CY juvenile at CDC. When I got to CDC at the age of 17, I was a scared kid. I was afraid that I was going to get raped, I was going to get beaten, I was going to get stabbed. And because of those fears, I affiliated myself with an organization that kept me there a lot longer than I had to be. If I had better programs like Scott Kernan had at Mill Creek State Prison, juvenile diversion programs, the CGA programs, the self-help, the people that he had put into place to organize programs. Also allowing myself to create programs, to facilitate programs, create reentry programs. Again, I thank you, God, because I didn't think I was able to see it. And I seen you guys said, man, I know Scott Kernan. I met that guy when I was over here. And now to see him here, it's an honor. And what I want to say to the BSCC board is that I'm willing to do whatever I can to help with juvenile justice and the prevention program. You guys say there's a 3-year plan for funding and goals and priorities. Well, I would like to see what those 3-year plans are. And I'd like to see them in effect. I'd like to see some type of oversight. I commend everybody who does something for the juveniles, because the juveniles are our future. How can we look at ourselves in the mirror every day and say that we're doing the right things for our kids when there's laws that are being passed to try us even younger as an adult and send us away? Where's the rehabilitation at? How can you say that our kids' lives are worth 3 days when you allow a district attorney 3 days, 72 hours to determine if he's going to try to juvenile as an adult or not? There's something wrong in society when you say that. That is saying that somebody like myself is not worth something, that I'm worthless. Today I'm here before you because I have sought rehabilitation. I have sought some type of education. I went to prison with the 5th grade comprehension level. Again, I was an adult. I went to the penitentiary at 16 when I grew up with trauma in my life. Both my parents were heroin addicts. My grandma was a drug dealer, and I thought that was a lifestyle. I've experienced many trauma. Cops come to raid my house. I was in and out of foster care, shelter homes. I was abused. I was mistreated, and I committed a crime. And I was hurting, and I was in pain, and I was suffering. And yet the system said, excuse my language, fuck this kid. Send him away with the rest of the criminals and gang members and let him rot him back. I'm back. Because I didn't rot him back. I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna help see our juveniles get justice one way or another. Thank you.
Thank you.
So what's working for you now? Been out 4 months.
So
what's the difference?
It's been out 3 months. 4 months I'm working on.
One day at a time.
I get out. There is, you talk about re-entry into society. Well, I'm re-entering into society. Guess what? There was no opportunity for me to come out here. My parole agent, bless her heart, she was so kind enough to sit down and have lunch with me every day, helping me just emotionally get back into the real world after 26 years of being locked away. She took me to Fathers and Families in San Joaquin. And when I went to Sammy's organization, who was also a formerly incarcerated brother who just received the Founders Award for starting something in Stockton, I was given an opportunity to utilize my strength. And what I've been doing is just this week, I just went to Stag High, and I've been outreaching over there. I go to Stag High, I go to Lincoln High, I go to Edison High, I go to elementary schools, and I'm talking about suspensions. What are we doing? Why are we suspending our elementary kids?
But
Why are we suspending our elementary kids?
so what's working? You think that's working for you because you're involved, or what? I'm always looking for is there a key? What's the best thing? What do you think is working for you now that wasn't there in the past?
What wasn't there in the past was healed. And Fathers and Families has one of 8 trauma recovery centers in that organization. And I'm dealing with a lot of my trauma that I was going through growing up. And I'm dealing with a lot of my resentment that I had towards the system. And when I come to panels, it was always because I was before a panel because they were punishing me and telling me what was wrong with me. And now instead I'm coming before a panel and telling you guys those issues weren't wrong with me. There was something deeper than that. I was hurting. I had a lot of trauma in my life as a juvenile. And when you don't give a juvenile proper treatment, they're going to act out in rebellious ways. When a child is hurt, he hurts. And that's what I was dealing with. And within Fathers and Families right now, what they're doing for me, they're helping me heal. And me coming up here speaking is part of my healing process. This is allowing me to heal. I'm able to speak to myself 25 years ago. And I'm able to stand up here before myself and say, you know what, I was somebody. I just needed an opportunity.
So you have counseling services all for you?
I'm getting counseling.
By who?
I'm getting counseling for Dr. Carrillo, who's also part of our organization.
Are they former incarcerated people?
No, he's not a formerly incarcerated person, but there are formerly incarcerated people there that are my support network. The people that I work with, the brother before me, Brother Chambers, that just came up here, he's also a formerly incarcerated person who's been out many years now. He's telling me, showing me the way. And I'm so thankful for him, and I'm thankful for the brothers and sisters within the organization who's there to help me, to say, you know what, Randy, you can do it, this is what you're doing. And they're giving me this platform to come over here so I can speak before you board members and people that are fighting for juveniles. And when I get here today, I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna say when I get here, because I speak from my heart. I speak from my heart, and I'm just so passionate about everything that I do. And everybody who thought that I wasn't gonna ever get out, I'm out today, and I'm trying to figure out how am I gonna live my life every day by doing the right thing.
Well, you did a great job speaking. Do you go? I'm sorry to drag this on. Do you go there every day?
I work there every day. Now I'm fully employed with Fathers and Families. I'm under the BMOC, which is the Boys and Men of Color. I'm a movement builder, and I've also recently got the communications position in the office. So they're allowing me to work. They're working with me. They're giving me training. They're giving me training on therapy, on how to be a leader, how to be a speaker, how to just work within myself, how to get acclimated to society today. And like I said, prior to me even getting out, I was working in institutions, not me institutions that are 32, or working with juveniles like me. When I heard about the PREA, and no disrespect to anybody, but PREA is a joke in the contract. I got out 3 months ago, and I'll tell you, it's a joke. It's a joke, it's a shame, it's a disgrace. It's more embarrassment in there what's going on behind the walls with PREA. It could be done more professionally if there was more oversight. I'm not gonna knock anybody, because I believe that rehabilitation works, I believe that PREA can and will work, if it's put in the right hands, the right people behind it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I ask one follow-up? Where are you living and is your employment enough to cover your housing? What does that look like?
Well, unfortunately, hey, it's hard out here.
Right.
I've been blessed to be back. My father was in and out of prison so long. He's a drug addict. He's a recovering drug addict. I've been staying with my father. He has a 1-bedroom apartment. I sleep with my father, and we make it work. The best I can make it work. Because out here, they're not funding me. No one else is funding me. No one else is helping me. They're not giving me therapy. They're not giving me company. But I'm thankful to say that I've been studying. I just recently got myself a license. I got myself an ID. I got myself a social security card. Yeah, so
If you weren't living with your dad, where would you be living?
I'd be homeless. I'll be in a shelter.
That's my question.
I would be in a shelter, just like my sister is currently in a shelter from her addiction. My sister's in the shelter. My mother's on the streets. I don't really have that much family support. When I went to the Board of Prison Terms, I was divorced 7 times. I was denied 3 times. And the last 4 times I got grants. I got granted suitable in 2012. But the governor took my date because I didn't have that support on the streets. I went back the following year. I got a grant again. It took my date. That took my date 3 times. And that affected me so much. Because I was like, these people are never gonna let me get. My hope that I thought when I seen the light was just, it was snuffed. And I said, I'm never gonna get out. All of a sudden, believe it or not, Prop 261 happened. Juveniles that have served 10 or 15 years of their incarceration and show some type of rehabilitation, I did that. I got myself a GED and a diploma, and I got a college degree in prison. So I got every group you can think of, AA, NA, self-help, therapy, communication, coping skills. I did all the therapy myself. I went to counseling. I even had to go to triple CMS to seek counseling. Not that I was on medication for mental health issues, but I was dealing with a lot of mental health situations.
Right.
So I had to go there to seek therapy. Sometimes that can help me. So I don't know who's responsible for some of those things, but when the board or when the governor sees that you're enrolled in triple CMS mental health, they say you have a mental condition. That's what they said about me. That's why they didn't let me go. The last 3 years when I was thinking I was coming home, they said, oh, this inmate suffers from mental conditions, been in and out of mental health since 1994. I went to mental health because I needed help. I went to mental health because I needed therapy. I went to mental health because I wanted to become somebody better. Not because I had a mental condition, but because I was suffering. So the misplacement of labels, that affects us in a tremendous way.
Well, you remind me a lot of my husband. My husband was in California Youth Authority as a teenager. 6th grade education was his last. And he was a functional literate in California Youth Authority. And his father was a heroin addict, still is to this day, still runs the streets at 68 and shooting dope, which is beyond my comprehension. How is your dad staying clean?
Unfortunately, he's on methadone. He's in the methadone program. He's doing the best he can.
Otherwise, he'd be back on heroin.
He'd be back on heroin. He'd be back robbing and stealing. Right now, unfortunately, my mother's still running the streets using heroin to this day. To this day, I have to go and look and find her, but I can't do that anymore because that's what put me in position in prison. Because I took the law in my own hands when somebody robbed my grandmother and was using drugs with my mother. I took the law in my own hands and I did what I thought was right. I was a juvenile trying to protect my mother, trying to protect my father. I didn't do the right thing. So I had to suffer. I had to suffer, but I needed healing. Suffering is okay because I got healing out of my suffering.
Thank you.
Can you remind me your name?
My name is Raymond Aguilar.
Hey, Raymond. What's the big dream for the future, man? If you could do anything now, anything, you're so inspiring. Where do you see the rest of your life going?
I want to be the decision maker of our kids. I want to be the one that's going to make the decision making when it comes to our juvenile because I have that expertise. I have the first-hand knowledge and experience that people read about and study about. I read it, I studied, and I lived it. I know what it is to be a hurt juvenile. I know what it is to deal with juvenile delinquency. So my goal is to be the voice for the kids who can't speak. These are reasonable.
So maybe we'll talk to Sammy and see if we can get you on an ESC here so you could actually get to the table making those decisions.
That would be great.
Thanks, brother.
That's my goal.
Appreciate it, man.
I think, if my memory serves me correct, when you addressed this board, when you had only been out a matter of
10
days.
days.
10 days, matter of days. I know Katie, kudos to you, followed up with you to make sure that, you know, we can help you with any of the barriers. I'd also like to say, I appreciate you very much, giving, kind words to Secretary Kernan. We thought he was really special before. And now he is, you know, he's really, he walks the walk, talks the talk, and I'm happy that a man who started those programs at Mill Creek is now running the entire department, and I appreciate you raising that with today.
A lot of us behind the walls, even staff, don't know if you hear this, don't know if you guys know it. Scott Kernan done a lot for Mill Creek and the rehabilitation program over there. I mean, I got certificates with his name, I still have them. You know, we were the first one in Mill Creek in a level 4 yard, which is the high security, where we were allowing the level 3s to integrate with the level 4s to deal with the root policy, to do our inventory and learn about the 12 steps of program. We as ex-criminals and gang members, we have a lifestyle of addiction. And there are 10 most common crimes as we ex-criminals and gang members commit. And we learn about the lifestyle of addiction and how the obsession, compulsion, progression that we have to suffer from. And he allowed me as a level 4 high security inmate to work with level 3 inmates, and then later on deal with juveniles that were on parole or on probation. They were coming into the facility, and we were able to walk these kids to our laundry room, to our kitchens, to our chow house, and to our cells. And it wasn't a scare straight program, it was a care straight program. We weren't trying to scare no kid, they were already suffering their as it is. We were trying to heal them and trying to tell them, I understand you. What's going on in your household? Because that's what's going on. A lot of these kids are suffering when they go to school. Like I said, my parents are both drug addicts. My grandmother was a drug dealer. My whole family, I've been raided many times before I was the age of 10. My mother shot my father with a 357. Trauma. My grandmother shot my grandpa with a 38. Trauma. Then you send this little kid to school and you say, go learn, go study. My little brother was born in heroin addict. I had to raise my little brother since birth to the age of 3. From when I got locked up, I had to live with that in prison that I left my little brother behind for many years. Now I'm looking for my little brother and stop trying to bring him back, trying to create him, because I know they're suffering now. My life has been nothing but filled with trauma. There's so many kids right now that are just suffering, and they go to school, and guess what? They're rebellious. They're committing little minor things that kids do. You know what the school districts do? They call the police. And they say, this 10-year-old kid pulled the chair from this little girl. Let's suspend him for 10 days. He does it again, we'll suspend him again, then we'll expel him. Then what? Schools to prison. That's what they're doing. They're not creating and building more schools and universities. They're building more penitentiaries. How many more success stories are we going to hear? How many more people are we going to heal? How many more people are we going to save? How many more juveniles are we going to neglect? And then look later on and say, hey, you know what? I remember you from somewhere. Where I remember you from? Oh, you sent me away 20 years ago. These people, these kids that are going away, they're going to come back, and they're going to be your neighbors. And you're going to see them at the liquor store. You're going to see them at the supermarket. You're going to see them at the malls. So what justice is it that we sentence away and don't create the healing process? They're going to come back out sooner or later. We need to start now before they get there. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Well, I don't know how we followed that. Sorry, did you an injustice.
Madam Chair and ladies and gentlemen of the BSCC Board, my name is Lieutenant Walter of the Placer County Sheriff's Office. My purpose today is to thank the BSCC rating panel for selecting our agency to receive $9.5 million in a partial conditional award related to Senate Bill 863. Governor Brown, the BSCC, and the Placer County Sheriff's Office share a common vision and mission to improve the lives of our incarcerated inmates in the Placer County Jail. The $9.5 million has been dedicated to build a mental health wing at our South Placer Jail campus, which is currently in the establishment phase with the BSCC. However, we have much more work that needs to be done. Our original SB 863 proposal included 2 housing units, a large vocational shop space, educational classroom, and behavioral training areas. This was to offer needed skills to our inmates to improve their outlook and offer a roadmap to bring meaningful employment back into their lives, which in turn will reduce recidivism. This portion of our proposal is in need of the remainder of approximately $30 million in dedicated funding to make our project whole and complete our mission. Our proposal needs assessment is complete, and we have met or exceeded the standards set forth by the BSCC. In regards to SB 844 funding, we follow CREA guidelines and do offer in-person visitation in our current facility. I'm here to ask the BSCC to please reconsider reducing the remainder of the funding without further documentation so we can make a difference in our community and provide each of our incarcerated individuals those opportunities they deserve. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Still got 5 minutes left, so I will say good morning.
No, you only have 3. Don't make me get three.
Good afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Pineda. I'm the Leadership and Curriculum Specialist with NEPA. I'm also one of the co-founders, and I am also one of the individuals that was on that list for the CalGRIP that was recently accepted to the Executive Steering Committee. I want to thank you all for keeping public safety in your mind, but also community engagement at the forefront as well. And I would like to encourage you all to please consider this process throughout building out that 3-year strategic plan. I'm also here in support of the letter and the recommendations that was made by advocates. When I came home and was kind of told like, hey, you got accepted to the steering committee, and I was able to tell some of the fellas around like, hey, this is what's happening. I saw so much hope in their eyes. I saw, well, maybe it's not all that bad. You know, maybe people are trying to make good decisions. Maybe that system is not so bad. It's just a little bit ill right now. And it takes individuals on both sides of the spectrum to be able to go in there and make decisions that are in regards to public safety. We want to live safe as well, too. I don't want to hear more stories like the young man's back here. I call him a young man, he's older than I am. You know, I don't want my children to have to go through that. And I would also encourage as well some type of transparency to where the public can also access that information, that the decisions that are being made within that strategic planning process, because having the beautiful opportunity to work with a wide array of community members, those that have had like polar opposites of experiences, what I hear across the board is this lack of access to relevant information. And individuals want to be apprised and be kept aware of what is going on inside of these rooms, and to also feel content and feel comfortable that the best decisions are being made, and they could have some sort of loose interaction with that process as well. So thank you all very much, and I hope that you strongly consider the recommendations that were made by the community advocates. Have a good day.
Thank you. All right, I don't see anybody moving forward. I think we all know that was a very powerful end of meeting. There's nothing else to be said except this is adjourned.